Driver, stop the car. Stop it now. Daniel Okafor's voice tore through the leather interior of his Rolls Royce Phantom, startling his chauffeur so badly the vehicle lurched to a halt in the middle of Lagos traffic. Horns blared. Motorcycles swerved. But Daniel saw none of it. His eyes were locked on two skeletal figures standing beneath a faded umbrella at the intersection of Victoria Island, a boy and a girl, both covered in dust, holding a piece of torn cardboard that read, "Please help us eat. God bless you." Hello guys. Welcome to Stories by Stoner. Before we dive into today's heart-wrenching story, I want to thank each and every one of you for your incredible support. You are the reason this channel exists. Now, please drop a comment below and tell me, where are you watching from? Lagos, Nairobi, Kingston, New York. I want to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, let's get into this powerful story. Daniel's hands trembled as he pushed open the car door, ignoring his security detail's protests. 15 years. 15 years since he'd left Nigeria with nothing but a dream and a promise. 15 years of building an empire across 3 continents, tech investments, real estate, manufacturing. Forbes had just named him one of Africa's top 10 billionaires. But none of that mattered now, because the little girl standing in the scorching afternoon sun had his mother's eyes. The boy had his jawline, his nose, his exact posture when frightened. "Sir, please, we should keep moving," his lead bodyguard said urgently. "This area." I said stop. Daniel's voice cracked with an emotion he hadn't felt in over a decade. Terror. He walked toward the children slowly, as if approaching a mirage that might vanish. His Italian leather shoes crunched on broken glass and dirt. Street vendors paused their calls. A woman selling oranges stared at the billionaire in his custom-tailored suit walking toward 2 beggar children. The boy, he couldn't have been more than 12, immediately stepped in front of his sister, his thin arms spread protectively. His eyes held the hardness of someone who'd learned too young that the world was cruel. "Please, sir," the boy said, his voice steady despite his trembling hands. "Anything you can spare. We haven't eaten since yesterday." Daniel's knees nearly buckled. That voice. He'd heard it before. In dreams he'd tried to forget. In memories he'd drowned in champagne and business deals. "What?" Daniel's throat felt like sandpaper. "What is your name?" The boy hesitated, distrust flickering across his gaunt face. "David, sir." The world tilted. "And your sister?" Daniel whispered, though he already knew. God help him, he already knew. "Grace. Her name is Grace." Daniel staggered backward, catching himself against a nearby wall. Those names. Those exact names. The names he and Ngozi had chosen together 15 years ago, laughing in their tiny one-room apartment in Surulere, her belly swollen with twins, their future bright with possibility. "Sir, are you okay?" The security guard reached for him. "Don't touch me," Daniel roared, tears now streaming freely down his face, shocking everyone on the street into silence. He looked at the children, really looked at them. David's arms were thin as bamboo, his school uniform, if you could call the torn, filthy rags that, hanging off his small frame. Grace hadn't spoken yet. She just stared at Daniel with those enormous eyes, her lips cracked from dehydration, a healing scar across her left cheek. "Where is your mother?" Daniel managed to ask, though every cell in his body screamed the answer he didn't want to hear. David's face crumpled for just a second before he forced it back into that terrible, unchildlike hardness. "She died, sir. 3 months ago. Malaria. We couldn't afford the hospital." The street spun. Car horns faded into white noise. Daniel heard nothing but the pounding of his own heartbeat and the echo of promises he'd broken. "I'll send for you as soon as I'm settled, Ngozi. I promise. Just give me 6 months." 6 months had become a year. A year became 2. Calls became emails. Emails became silence. He'd told himself they were fine. That Ngozi's family would help. That he needed to focus on building something first. Something worthy, before bringing them over. The lies he'd told himself for 15 years shattered like glass. Your mother. Daniel's voice broke completely. What was her name? Ngozi Okafor, sir. David's voice held a note of pride even through the pain. She used to say our father would come back for us one day. She said he was a good man who just needed time. She believed in him until the very end. Daniel collapsed to his knees right there in the dirt, expensive suit and all, sobbing like a child. Street vendors gathered. Motorcyclists slowed. His security team formed a protective circle, completely bewildered. I'm sorry, Daniel wept, reaching toward the children. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Grace spoke for the first time, her voice tiny and confused. Why is the rich man crying, brother? David pulled her closer, still protective, still distrustful. I don't know, Grace. Stay close to me. Daniel looked up at his son, and spoke the words that would change everything. Because I'm not just a rich man. His voice shook with 15 years of guilt, shame, and unbearable grief. I'm your father. And I abandoned you. I abandoned you both. And your mother died because of me. The street fell completely silent. David's face went through a dozen emotions in seconds. Disbelief, anger, hope, rage, confusion. Grace just stared, her small hand clutching her brother's torn shirt. You're lying, David finally said, his voice hard. Our father died. Mama said. Your mother lied to protect me. To protect my memory. Because she was better than I ever deserved. Daniel slowly stood, his hands shaking. Your birthday is October 15th. You were born at exactly 3:47 a.m. David first, then Grace 4 minutes later. You, David, came out screaming. Grace came out silent, and we were terrified until she finally cried. Your mother craved mangoes and fufu throughout her pregnancy. I was there. I was there. David's protective stance wavered. How do you know? Because I held you both in my arms the day you were born. Tears poured down Daniel's face. And then I failed you every day after. What would you do if you were David? Would you accept this father who abandoned you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. This story is just beginning, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Get in the car. David's voice was sharp, protective, as he pulled Grace behind him. We're not going anywhere with you. Daniel's heart shattered further, but he understood. What had he expected? That these children he'd abandoned would fall into his arms with gratitude? That 15 years of absence could be erased with tears and apologies? Please, Daniel said, his voice raw. Just let me feed you. Both of you. One meal. Then, if you want, you can leave. I won't stop you. Grace tugged on her brother's sleeve. David, I'm hungry, she whispered, so quietly Daniel almost missed it. The look of pain that crossed David's young face, the terrible burden of being 12 years old and responsible for keeping your sister alive, nearly broke Daniel completely. Fine, David said coldly. One meal. Then we go. The drive from Victoria Island to Daniel's estate in Ikoyi was silent except for Grace's small gasps every time she saw something through the tinted windows. The massive billboards, the luxury hotels, the gleaming high-rises that had sprung up during her short lifetime. Daniel's security team had called ahead. By the time the convoy pulled through the golden gates of his compound, his household staff stood assembled on the marble steps, confusion written across every face. His estate manager, Emeka, hurried forward as Daniel emerged. Sir, we weren't expecting. He stopped mid-sentence, staring at the two filthy children climbing out of the Rolls Royce. These are my children, Daniel said simply, his voice breaking on the last word. David and Grace. They need food, clothes, medical attention, and rooms prepared. Now. The staff stood frozen in shock. Now. Daniel roared, and everyone scattered into motion. He turned to the children. David still held Grace's hand, both of them staring up at the 3-story mansion with its fountain, manicured gardens, and fleet of luxury cars like they'd landed on another planet. "This is where you live," Grace whispered. "This is where we live," Daniel corrected gently. "This is your home now." "This isn't our home," David said bitterly. "Our home was a one-room apartment in Ajagunal where the roof leaked and rats ran across our feet at night. Our home was where our mother died coughing blood because we couldn't afford 2,000 naira for medicine." Each word was a knife. Daniel absorbed them all, knowing he deserved far worse. "You're right," he said quietly. "And I can never undo that. But I'm here now, and I swear to God, I will spend the rest of my life." "Your swear to God means nothing," David interrupted, his young voice filled with ancient pain. "You swore to come back for us. You swore to send money. You swore you loved our mother. Your promises are worthless." Before Daniel could respond, his head housekeeper, Mrs. Blessing, appeared in the doorway. "Sir, the children's rooms are ready. I've also prepared a bath and laid out some temporary clothes." "Thank you, Mrs. Blessing." Daniel turned to David and Grace. "Please, clean up, eat. Then we'll talk." Grace looked up at her brother, hope and hunger warring in her eyes. David's jaw tightened, but finally he nodded. Mrs. Blessing led them inside, and Daniel watched his children disappear into his mansion. Two ghosts from a past he tried to bury, now solid and real and accusing. Emeka approached cautiously. "Sir, with respect, are you certain? How do you know these children are really?" "I know my own children," Daniel said sharply. Then, softer, "I know my failures, Emeka. And these are the living, breathing consequences." An hour later, Daniel stood outside the guest rooms that had been prepared. He knocked softly on David's door. "Come in," came the wary response. David sat on the edge of a bed large enough to fit 6 people, wearing clothes that actually fit for the first time in who knew how long. His hair was clean, revealing tight curls exactly like Daniel's had been at that age. A plate of jollof rice, chicken, and plantain sat beside him, barely touched. "You should eat," Daniel said. "I took food to Grace first. Made sure she ate. She's sleeping now." David's voice was matter of fact, years of survival training evident in every word. "You can't trust anyone to care about her except me." "You shouldn't have had to grow up so fast," Daniel said, his throat tight. "You should have been playing football, going to school, being a child. Not parenting your sister at 12 years old." "I'm 13, David corrected. "Our birthday was last month. We spent it begging outside a church. A woman gave us 50 naira and told us to pray for blessings." He laughed bitterly. "Guess her prayers worked. We found a billionaire." Daniel sat down slowly in the chair across from the bed, careful not to intrude on David's space. "Tell me what happened after I left, please." David studied him with eyes far too old for his face. "Why? So you can feel worse? So you can cry more tears that don't change anything?" "Because I need to know. Because they're my children, and I failed them, and I need to understand exactly how badly I destroyed the people I was supposed to protect." Something in Daniel's raw honesty seemed to crack David's armor, just slightly. "Mama waited for you," David said finally, his voice distant. "Every day for the first 2 years, she checked her phone, her email. She told us stories about you. How smart you were, how hard you worked, how you were building something amazing for our family. She never let us hate you." Tears rolled silently down Daniel's face. Then the money stopped coming. The calls stopped. She took any job she could find, cleaning, cooking, washing clothes. She worked herself to exhaustion keeping us fed and in school. David's hands clenched into fists. "When we were 7, she got sick the first time. Malaria. She recovered, but she was never the same. Weaker. Always tired. Why didn't she reach out to my family?" Daniel asked desperately. "My mother, my brothers." "She did," David said flatly. "Your brother Obinna told her you'd started a new life abroad. That you had a new woman. That we should stop embarrassing you by claiming to be your children. Daniel's vision went red. What? She never asked them for anything again. She said if you wanted nothing to do with us, she'd make sure we survived anyway. And she did. Until she couldn't anymore. David's voice finally broke. 3 months ago, she collapsed at work. By the time I found her, she was burning with fever. The hospital wanted payment up front. I begged. I pleaded. They turned us away. No, Daniel moaned. No, no, no. She died the next morning in our room. She made me promise to take care of Grace, to keep her in school, to make sure she had a better life. David's face was wet with tears now too. I've been trying. But I failed her too. Just like you did. Daniel crossed the room and knelt before his son, taking his thin shoulders gently. You did not fail her. You're 13 years old, and you've been more of a man than I've ever been. You protected your sister. You kept her alive. You honored your mother's memory. You did everything right, David. Everything. The only failure in this story is mine. For the first time, David's composure completely shattered. He collapsed against Daniel's chest, sobbing, deep, wrenching sounds of grief too long held inside a body too small to contain it. Daniel held his son and wept with him, knowing that no amount of money, no mansion, no empire could ever undo the damage he'd caused. But maybe, just maybe, he could start building something real. The road to redemption would be long and painful. But it started here in this room, with a broken father and a son who'd been forced to become a man far too soon. Do you think David can ever truly forgive his father? What would you do in his position? Drop your comments below. And if this story is touching your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Stories by Stoner for more powerful tales. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Morning light flooded through floor-to-ceiling windows, waking Daniel from a restless sleep on the couch in his study. He hadn't been able to bring himself to sleep in his king-sized bed, knowing his children had spent years sleeping on thin mats on concrete floors. His phone buzzed. 23 missed calls from his brother Obinna. 12 from his mother. 8 from his younger brother, Felix. News traveled fast in Lagos, especially when a billionaire picks up beggar children and declares them his own. Daniel ignored them all and walked to the kitchen, where he found Mrs. Blessing preparing breakfast. Mountains of pancakes, eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, and orange juice. Are they awake? He asked. The young Master David has been awake since 5 a.m., sir. He's been sitting outside his sister's door, watching. Making sure she's safe. Mrs. Blessing's voice held both admiration and heartbreak. I offered him breakfast. He said he'll eat when Grace eats. Daniel's chest tightened. Where are they now? Still upstairs, sir. The little one just woke up. Daniel climbed the stairs to find David exactly where Mrs. Blessing had said, sitting cross-legged outside Grace's door like a guardian. You don't have to do that anymore, Daniel said softly. She's safe here. I promise. Your promises mean nothing, David replied without looking up. I'll believe she's safe when I see it proven over time. Not before. Before Daniel could respond, Grace's door opened. She peeked out, her face clean, her hair freshly plaited by Mrs. Blessing the night before. She wore a simple dress that was still too large, but at least it was clean and whole. Good morning, she said shyly, looking between Daniel and her brother. Good morning, Grace, Daniel said, his voice gentle. Are you hungry? She nodded, still half hiding behind the door. Then let's have breakfast together. As a family. David stood abruptly. We're not a family. We're strangers who happen to share blood. David, Grace started, but her brother cut her off. It's true, Grace. Don't let the fancy house and nice clothes fool you. He left us. He left Mama. A real father doesn't do that. The words cut deep, but Daniel absorbed them. You're absolutely right. I don't deserve to call myself your father, but I'm asking for a chance to earn it back. Some things can't be earned back, David said coldly. Some things, once broken, stay broken forever. The sound of the front gate opening interrupted them. Voices rose from downstairs, loud, familiar, unwelcome. Where is my brother? Daniel. Daniel, where are you? Daniel's jaw clenched. Obinna. He hurried downstairs to find his older brother pushing past Emeka, his mother Mama Okafor close behind, and Felix trailing nervously. Daniel, what is this madness I'm hearing? Obinna demanded, his expensive agbada swirling as he gestured dramatically. You brought street children into your home and claimed them as your own? Have you lost your mind? Get out of my house, Daniel said quietly, dangerously. Mama Okafor gasped. Daniel, is this how you speak to your brother? Your elder? We came here out of concern. Concern. Daniel's voice rose. You want to talk about concern? Where was your concern when my wife was dying? When my children were starving? Your wife? Obinna scoffed. You mean that girl from Ajagunal? Daniel, we told you 15 years ago she was beneath you. We told you to focus on your future, not some pregnancy that would trap you in poverty. The sound of a gasp made everyone turn. David and Grace stood on the staircase, Grace clutching her brother's hand, both of them hearing every word. Daniel's face went pale. David, Grace, please go back upstairs. No, David said, his voice steady but his eyes burning with rage. Let them talk. Let's hear what your family really thinks of us. Obinna noticed the children for the first time. His eyes widened in recognition. The resemblance was undeniable. Then his face hardened. So it's true. These are the children. He said the word like it tasted bitter. These are my son and daughter, Daniel said, his voice like steel. David and Grace Okafor. Your nephew and niece. They're bastards from a woman who tried to trap you. Obinna shot back. Daniel, think about your reputation. You're about to close a deal with the Johnsons, merge with their company. Do you know what bringing these street children into your life will do to your image? I don't care about the Johnsons. I don't care about my image. I care about my children. Mama Okafor stepped forward, her voice softer but no less cutting. Daniel, my son, we only want what's best for you. These children have lived in poverty all their lives. They don't understand our world. They could be after your money, using your guilt. Enough. Daniel roared, making everyone jump. You want to know what happened to Ngozi? She died. She died because she couldn't afford medicine. She died because when she reached out to this family for help, you, he pointed at Obinna, told her I wanted nothing to do with them. You lied to her. You condemned my wife and children to poverty and suffering while I was building my empire, thinking they were fine. Obinna's face flushed. I did what was necessary. You were young, foolish, getting distracted by some girl who would have ruined your potential. I protected your future. You destroyed my family. Daniel's voice cracked. My wife believed I abandoned her because of your lies. My children grew up thinking their father didn't want them because you turned them away. Felix spoke up for the first time, his voice quiet. Brother Daniel. Is it true? Did she really die? 3 months ago, David answered, his voice hard. Malaria. We begged at the hospital. They said no money, no treatment. She died in our one room, coughing blood, calling for a husband who never came. Mama Okafor's hand went to her mouth, tears forming. Oh, Chukwu. Don't, Daniel said bitterly. Don't you dare cry for her now. She came to you. 5 years ago, she came to this house, to you, Mama, with David and Grace, begging for help. Just a little money to keep them in school. Do you remember what you told her? Mama Okafor's silence was damning. Answer me. Daniel shouted. I told her. Mama Okafor's voice shook. I told her that if you truly wanted them, you would have sent for them yourself. That she should stop using children to manipulate my son. Grace made a small sound of pain. David's arm went around her protectively. Daniel looked at his mother with eyes full of devastation and rage. She wasn't manipulating anyone. She was dying. Slowly. And she needed help. But you all decided her life, my children's lives, were worth less than my career. Less than your pride. We didn't know, Felix started. You didn't ask. Daniel cut him off. You didn't care enough to ask. You saw a poor woman with children and assumed the worst. You protected your investment in me, not the family I created. Obinna straightened his agbada, his face hardening again. Fine. You want to play the guilty father? Take care of them. But don't expect this family to welcome them with open arms. And when your business partners start asking questions, when your deals start falling apart because you're associated with poverty and scandal, don't come crying to us. Get out, Daniel said coldly. All of you. You're not welcome in my home. You're not welcome in my life. And you are never to come near my children again. Daniel, please. Mama Okafor reached for him. I said get out. The force of his voice sent them backing toward the door. Felix looked torn, glancing between Daniel and the children on the stairs with regret in his eyes. But he followed their mother and Obinna out. The door slammed shut. Silence filled the mansion. Daniel turned to find David and Grace still on the stairs. Grace was crying silently. David's face was a mask of pain and vindication. Now you see, David said quietly. This is what we are to people like them. Shameful secrets. Mistakes to be hidden. Daniel climbed the stairs slowly and knelt before his children. You are not mistakes. You are not shameful. You are my greatest treasures, and I was too blind and too foolish to see it. But I see it now. And I will spend every day proving it to you. Grace looked at him with her mother's eyes. Do you really mean that? With everything I have, Daniel swore. I failed your mother. I will not fail you. Not anymore. David studied his father's face for a long moment. Something shifted in his eyes. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the smallest crack in the wall he'd built around his heart. Prove it, David said simply. Not with words. With actions. I will, Daniel promised. Starting today. What do you think of Daniel's family? Were they protecting him or destroying him? And can Daniel truly make up for 15 years of absence? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you're enjoying this story, smash that like button and subscribe to Stories by Stoner. We're just getting started, and you won't believe what happens next. 3 days passed in Daniel's mansion like a fragile dream. Grace slowly began to smile. Small, cautious smiles when Mrs. Blessing made her favorite meals or when she discovered the library filled with books. But David remained a wall of ice, watching, analyzing, waiting for his father to fail. On the 4th morning, Daniel found David sitting in the garden, staring at nothing. I need to go somewhere today, Daniel said carefully. And I want you both to come with me. David's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Where? Ajagunal. To your old home. To see where you lived with your mother. Why? David's voice was sharp. So you can see how badly we suffered. So you can feel worse about yourself. No, Daniel said quietly. Because I need to understand. I need to see what my absence created. And because there might be things there, your mother's belongings, photographs, memories, that you want to keep. David's expression shifted slightly. Mama's things are still there. Our neighbor, Mama Ebel, has been keeping the room locked. She said she'd hold it until we could come back. His voice cracked. I didn't know if we'd ever be able to. An hour later, Daniel's convoy pulled into Ajagunal, one of Lagos's most densely packed neighborhoods, where wealth was measured in meals per day and hope was a luxury few could afford. The contrast between his gleaming Rolls Royce and the narrow, unpaved streets was obscene. Children playing football stopped to stare. Women selling vegetables whispered behind their hands. Men lounging outside beer parlors stood up, recognizing the expensive cars but not understanding why they'd come here. That building, David pointed to a 3-story structure with peeling paint and rusted zinc roofing. Top floor, last room on the right. Daniel's security team wanted to sweep the building first, but Daniel waved them off. This wasn't about safety. This was about penance. The stairs were narrow and dark, the walls stained with mold and years of cooking smoke. Each step Daniel climbed felt like walking deeper into his own guilt. This was where his children had grown up. This was where his wife had died. An elderly woman appeared on the landing, Mama Ebel, her face lined with years of hardship but her eyes sharp and knowing. David. Grace. She pulled the children into a fierce hug, then looked up at Daniel with recognition that turned quickly to rage. You're the father who abandoned them. Yes, Ma, Daniel said, unable to meet her eyes. Ngozi showed me your picture. Kept it in a frame beside her bed even when she had nothing else. She loved you until her last breath. Mama Ebel's voice shook with anger. Do you know what she said before she died? She said, "Tell Daniel I forgive him. Tell him to be happy." Daniel's knees buckled. He caught himself against the wall, tears streaming down his face. She was too good for you, Mama Ebel continued. Too pure. Too forgiving. These children should hate you. If I were David, I would spit in your face. Mama Ebel, please, Grace said softly, taking the old woman's hand. He's trying. Trying. The old woman scoffed. Trying doesn't bring back their mother. Trying doesn't erase 15 years of suffering. You're right, Daniel said, his voice broken. Nothing I do will ever be enough. But I'm here now, and I won't leave them again. I swear on my life. Mama Ebel studied him for a long moment, then spat at his feet. Your swear means nothing to me. But these children have suffered enough. If you hurt them again, billionaire or not, I will curse you with every breath in my body until the day I die. She pulled out a key and unlocked the door. The room was barely 10 feet by 10 feet. A single mattress lay on the floor, thin and stained. A small kerosene stove sat in the corner. A plastic bucket for washing. A wooden crate that served as a table. And on the wall, exactly as Mama Ebel had said, a framed photograph of Daniel from 15 years ago, smiling, young, full of dreams. Grace walked to the mattress and picked up a threadbare blanket, holding it to her face. This was Mama's. It still smells like her. David opened the wooden crate with shaking hands. Inside were notebooks, dozens of them, filled with Ngozi's handwriting. He pulled one out and began to read aloud, his voice breaking. January 15th, 2018. David asked about his father today. I told him Daniel was building something wonderful for us. I told him his father loved him. I pray it's true. I pray Daniel hasn't forgotten us. The money stopped coming 6 months ago. I got a job washing clothes for Madam Joke. It's enough for food, barely. I'm so tired. But I can't let the children see me weak. I have to believe Daniel will come back. I have to. Daniel collapsed onto the floor, sobbing openly. Ngozi, I'm sorry. God forgive me, I'm so sorry. David flipped through more notebooks, his hands trembling. There are years of these. Years of her waiting. Years of her believing in you. He threw a notebook at Daniel's chest. Read them. Read every single word. Read how she struggled. How she worked herself to death believing you still loved her. Daniel picked up the notebook with shaking hands and read. August 3rd, 2020. Grace got sick today. Fever and vomiting. I spent our last 3,000 naira on medicine. We'll have no food until I get paid next week. David gave his sister his portion of rice. He's 10 years old and already sacrificing for his family. He shouldn't have to be this strong. His father should be here. But I keep telling myself Daniel has a good reason. That he's facing his own battles. That he hasn't forgotten us. I have to believe that. If I stop believing, I'll have nothing left. She never stopped loving you, Mama Ebel said quietly. Even when her own family told her to forget you, find someone else, she refused. Daniel is my husband, she'd say. He'll come back. Grace was crying now, holding her mother's blanket. I miss her so much. David pulled his sister close, his own tears falling. I know, Grace. I know. Daniel stood slowly, looking around the room that had been his family's entire world. The room where his children had slept cold and hungry. The room where his wife had died alone, still believing in a man who'd abandoned her. I want to buy this building, Daniel said suddenly. Everyone looked at him in shock. I want to buy this entire building and renovate it. Turn these rooms into proper apartments, decent homes with running water, electricity, real bathrooms. I want to give every family here what I failed to give my own. His voice strengthened. And I want this room, this specific room, preserved exactly as it is. As a reminder of what happens when a man puts ambition before family. Of the price of my success. What good will that do? David demanded. Charity doesn't bring back our mother. No, Daniel agreed. Nothing will bring her back. But maybe, just maybe, I can honor her memory by helping the community she loved. The neighbors who helped you when I didn't. The people who showed my family more kindness than their own flesh and blood. Mama Ebel's expression softened slightly. Ngozi would like that. She always said if she ever had money, she'd help everyone on this floor. She had the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. Daniel knelt before his children. I can't undo the past. I can't bring your mother back. But I can try to build the future she wanted for you. A future where you never suffer again. Where you're educated, protected, loved. Will you let me try? Grace looked at her brother, her eyes pleading. David stared at his father for a long moment. Then he reached into the crate and pulled out one more item. A letter, sealed in plastic, with T.O. Daniel, written on the envelope in Ngozi's handwriting. She wrote this 2 weeks before she died, David said, his voice hollow. She made me promise to give it to you if you ever came back. He thrust the letter at Daniel. Read it. Then tell me if you deserve a second chance. Daniel took the letter with trembling hands. The paper was worn, handled many times, as if Ngozi had held it often before sealing it away. He opened it and read. My dearest Daniel, if you're reading this, I am gone, and our children have somehow found you. I don't know how or when or under what circumstances, but I pray they did. I need you to know that I forgave you long ago. I don't know why you stopped calling, stopped sending money, stopped being part of our lives. Maybe you had good reasons. Maybe you simply forgot us. Maybe you built a new life that had no room for the family you left behind. It doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that David and Grace are the most precious gifts God ever gave us. They are brilliant, kind, resilient children who deserved better than the life I could give them. They deserved a father. I'm not writing to make you feel guilty. I'm writing to beg you, if you have any love left in your heart for me, for the people we were, for the dreams we shared, please take care of our children. Love them. Protect them. Give them the future we planned together. Don't let my death be in vain. Don't let their suffering continue. Be the man I fell in love with. The man I still believe exists somewhere inside you. I loved you then. I love you now. I will love you forever. Yours always. Ngozi. Daniel's hands shook so badly he could barely hold the paper. The letter fell from his fingers as he collapsed completely, his body racked with sobs that came from the deepest part of his soul. Grace moved first, walking slowly to her father and placing her small hand on his shoulder. Mama loved you, she whispered. She said love means forgiving. David stood frozen, watching his father break apart on the floor of the room where his mother had died. And for the first time since Daniel had found them on that street corner, something in David's hardened expression cracked. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe, just maybe, the beginning of healing. Could you forgive someone who abandoned you if the person you loved most asked you to? What do you think David will decide? Drop your thoughts below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. This story is reaching its turning point, and you won't want to miss what happens next on Stories by Stoner. 2 weeks had passed since the visit to Ajagunal. Daniel had kept his word. Contractors were already working on the building, transforming it from a deteriorating structure into proper housing. The neighborhood watched in amazement as walls were repaired, plumbing installed, electrical wiring replaced. But the transformation happening inside Daniel's mansion was far more complex. Grace had begun calling him Papa tentatively, testing the word like a foreign language she was learning. Each time she said it, Daniel's heart both soared and broke, knowing he hadn't earned the title but was desperate to prove worthy of it. David remained distant, polite but cold. He went to the expensive private school Daniel had enrolled them in, wore the uniform, did his homework. But his eyes held a guardedness that never disappeared, even when Grace laughed or when Mrs. Blessing made his favorite meals. "He doesn't trust you," Grace explained one evening when Daniel asked. She was curled up in the library, surrounded by books. "He says trust has to be earned over years, not weeks." "He's right," Daniel said quietly. "I just hope I have enough years left to earn it." The following Monday, Daniel was in his home office reviewing contracts when Emeka knocked urgently. "Sir, there's a woman at the gate. She's claiming to be the children's aunt. Ngozi's sister. She's demanding to see them." Daniel's blood ran cold. "Send her away. She's threatening to go to the media, sir. She says you kidnapped her sister's children, that you have no legal right to them." Daniel closed his eyes, feeling the walls closing in. In his rush to bring David and Grace home to right his wrongs, he hadn't thought about legal guardianship, about Ngozi's family, about the fact that legally, he had no documentation proving these children were his. "Let her in," he said finally. "But David and Grace stay upstairs. I'll handle this." 10 minutes later, a woman in her late 30s swept into his sitting room. Her expensive handbag and designer shoes a stark contrast to the poverty Ngozi had died in. She introduced herself as Ifeoma, Ngozi's younger sister. "Where are my sister's children?" she demanded without preamble. "Safe," Daniel replied carefully. "Being cared for. By you. The man who abandoned them for 15 years. Ifeoma laughed bitterly. "You have some nerve, Daniel Okafor. Or should I call you by your new title, billionaire who forgot he had a family?" "What do you want, Ifeoma?" "What I want is justice for my sister. What I want is for those children to be with family who actually cares about them. What I want is for you to pay for what you did. If you cared so much, where were you when Ngozi was dying? When David and Grace were begging on the streets?" Ifeoma's face flushed. I had my own problems. My own family to take care of. So did I, apparently. And we both failed them." Daniel leaned forward. "But I'm here now. I'm taking care of them. They have everything they need." "Everything except legal guardianship," Ifeoma interrupted smugly. "I've spoken to a lawyer, Daniel. You have no legal claim to those children. Ngozi never put your name on their birth certificates. You never married her properly. You sent no money, no support. In the eyes of the law, you're a stranger." Daniel felt the ground shift beneath him. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. Those children are Ngozi's, and as her closest living relative, I have more claim to them than you do." She smiled coldly. "Unless, of course, we can come to an arrangement." There it was. The real reason for her visit. "How much?" Daniel asked flatly. 10 million naira. As compensation for my sister's suffering. For the children's trauma. And then I'll sign whatever papers you need giving you full custody. You're selling your nephew and niece. I'm ensuring they're taken care of while getting justice for my sister. Think of it as child support. 15 years worth, paid all at once. Before Daniel could respond, a voice cut through the room like a knife. You didn't even come to Mama's funeral. David stood in the doorway, Grace beside him, both children staring at their aunt with expressions of betrayal and rage. Ifeoma's face paled. David. Grace. I wanted to, but you weren't there, David continued, his voice shaking with fury. When Mama was sick, when she needed help, when she died alone in that room, you weren't there. You didn't come. You didn't call. You didn't send money. Nothing. I didn't know how bad things were. You knew. Grace shouted, shocking everyone. Quiet, gentle Grace was trembling with anger. Mama called you 3 years ago. She begged you for help. You told her you couldn't afford to help us because you just bought a new car. Ifeoma's mouth opened and closed like a fish. But now Papa is rich, and suddenly you care about us? Grace's voice broke. You don't want us. You want his money. That's not fair, Grace. I'm your family. No, David said coldly. Family doesn't abandon you. Family doesn't sell you. You're just a stranger with Mama's blood. He turned to Daniel. Don't give her anything. Not 1 naira. Daniel looked at his son, his brave, damaged, fierce son, standing protectively in front of his sister, defending the father who'd abandoned him against the aunt who'd ignored him. Something shifted in that moment. Emeka, Daniel called. His estate manager appeared immediately. Please escort Ms. Ifeoma out. And contact my legal team. I want DNA tests done immediately, guardianship papers filed, and every legal avenue explored to ensure these children stay with me. You can't do this. Ifeoma protested. I'll go to the media. I'll tell everyone how you kidnapped your own children, how you're buying their love. Go ahead, Daniel said quietly. Tell them everything. Tell them how I abandoned my wife and children for 15 years. Tell them how I found them begging on the streets. Tell them how their own aunt tried to extort money from me instead of caring about their welfare. Let's see which one of us comes out looking worse. Ifeoma's face twisted with rage, but she had no response. Emeka gently but firmly escorted her toward the door. This isn't over, she shouted as she was led out. Those children are Ngozis. You don't deserve them. You're right, Daniel called after her. I don't deserve them. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to. The door slammed shut. Silence filled the room. Then David spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Thank you. For not paying her. For not letting her use Mama's memory like that. Daniel turned to his children, tears in his eyes. I made a promise to your mother. I promised to take care of you. And unlike my other promises, this is one I'll keep. No matter what it costs. No matter who tries to stop me. Grace ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. You're really not going to leave us? Never, Daniel swore, holding her tight. Never again. David stood apart, watching. Then slowly, almost hesitantly, he took a step forward. Then another. Until he stood before his father, looking up at him with eyes that held years of pain and the smallest spark of hope. Prove it, David said, echoing his words from weeks ago. Not just with words. With actions. Every single day. I will, Daniel promised. Starting with making sure you're legally, permanently, unquestionably mine. Both of you. No one will ever take you away from me again. That evening, Daniel's legal team arrived with DNA testing kits. The process was simple. A cheek swab from each child, one from Daniel. Results would take a few days, but everyone in the room already knew what they'd show. As the lawyers packed up their equipment and began discussing guardianship proceedings, David pulled Daniel aside. What if? David's voice was uncertain, vulnerable in a way Daniel had never heard. What if your business partners are right? What if having us, kids from the slums, hurts your reputation? What if you start to resent us? Daniel knelt before his son, taking his thin shoulders gently. David, listen to me. I built an empire, yes. But I built it on a foundation of lies. Lies I told myself about why I wasn't coming home, about why I stopped calling, about why I let my family slip away. That empire is worth nothing if I'm still the man who abandoned his children. But the Johnson deal can go to hell, Daniel said firmly. If they don't want to do business with me because I'm taking care of my own children, then they're not the kind of people I want as partners anyway. You and Grace are worth more than every business deal in the world combined. David's eyes filled with tears he fought to hold back. I want to believe you. I want to trust you. But I'm so scared. Of what? Of believing again. Of hoping again. And then having you leave. David's voice cracked completely. I don't think I could survive that, Papa. I don't think I'm strong enough. It was the first time David had called him Papa. Daniel pulled his son into his arms, holding him as David finally let himself break, sobbing against his father's chest all the fear and pain he'd been carrying for 13 years. You don't have to be strong anymore, Daniel whispered. That's my job now. I'm the father. You get to be the child. You get to just be David. Not the protector, not the parent, not the survivor. Just my son. My precious, brave, wonderful son. Grace joined them, and for the first time since Daniel had found them on that street corner, the three of them held each other. Not as strangers, not as people bound by guilt and obligation, but as something that might, eventually, become a family. The road ahead was still long. Trust would take time. Healing would take longer. But in that moment, holding his children close, Daniel finally understood what he'd lost all those years ago and what he might, just might, have a chance to build again. What would you do if a family member tried to extort money from you for your own children? Do you think Daniel is finally becoming the father David and Grace need? Drop your comments below. If this story is moving you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. We're on Stories by Stoner, and we're not done yet. The DNA results came back 3 days later, though everyone already knew what they would say. 99.9% probability of paternity. Daniel Okafor was legally, scientifically, undeniably the father of David and Grace Okafor. But the real transformation wasn't happening in laboratories or courtrooms. It was happening in the quiet moments. In the morning when Daniel made breakfast himself instead of letting Mrs. Blessing do it, burning the eggs the first time but improving each day. In the evenings when he sat with Grace while she did homework, patiently explaining math problems he'd long forgotten. In the nights when David woke up screaming from nightmares about his mother's death, and Daniel was there, holding him, promising him he wasn't alone anymore. 6 weeks after finding his children on that street corner, Daniel did something he'd never done in 15 years of building his empire. He turned down a business meeting. "Sir, this is the Johnson deal," his assistant protested over the phone. "They're flying in from London specifically to meet with you. If you cancel, then I cancel," Daniel said firmly. He was sitting in the audience of David's school, waiting for his son's first debate competition. "Reschedule for next week. Or the week after. Or never. I don't care. But sir, my son is about to walk onto that stage, terrified but brave, and I promised I'd be here. That promise is worth more than any business deal ever will be. Goodbye, Jennifer." He hung up and saw David peeking from backstage, searching the crowd. When their eyes met, when David saw his father actually there, actually present, the boy's face transformed with relief and something that looked almost like pride. Grace sat beside Daniel, swinging her legs excitedly. David practiced his speech every night for 2 weeks. "He's really good, Papa." "I know he is," Daniel said, his heart swelling. "He's the strongest person I've ever met." The debate began, a discussion about whether success should be measured by wealth or character. David spoke last for his team, and when he stood at the podium, His voice was clear and steady. We often think success means money, power, fame. We see billionaires and think they have everything. But I've learned something important recently. You can have all the money in the world and still be the poorest person in the room if you've lost the people who matter most. Daniel's breath caught. Real success, David continued, his eyes finding his father in the crowd, is measured in kept promises. In showing up when it's hard. In choosing people over profit. In being brave enough to admit when you've failed and humble enough to try again. That's the kind of success that actually matters. That's the kind that lasts. The audience erupted in applause. David's team won the debate. But more importantly, when David came off that stage, he ran straight to Daniel and hugged him, truly hugged him, for the first time. "You came," David whispered. "I'll always come," Daniel promised. "Every debate, every football match, every school play, every moment you'll let me be part of. I'll be there." That night, after celebrating David's victory with ice cream and Grace's request for pizza, "Even though we can afford fancy restaurants now, pizza is still the best," she declared. Daniel gathered his children in the living room. "I need to tell you something," he began. "I've made a decision about my company." David's face immediately shuttered with worry. "You're selling it? We have to move." "No, nothing like that. But I am making changes." Daniel took a breath. "I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations. I'm promoting my deputy CEO to handle most of the business while I focus on being here. With you. Being your father isn't a part-time job I can squeeze in between meetings. It's my priority. My only priority." "But your empire," David started, "is meaningless without you," Daniel interrupted. "I spent 15 years building something impressive and hollow. Now I want to build something real. A family. A home. A life that actually matters." Grace climbed into his lap. "Does this mean you'll always be home for dinner?" "Every single night, unless there's an absolute emergency. And even then, I'll do everything I can to be here." "What about the Johnson deal?" David asked quietly. "Everyone says it could make you twice as rich." "I don't need to be twice as rich. I need to be twice as present. 10 times as present. 100 times. Daniel looked at both his children. "Money can't hug you when you're scared. It can't cheer for you at debates. It can't tuck you in at night or tell you it's proud of you. I wasted 15 years learning that lesson. I won't waste another day." David was quiet for a long moment. Then, "The Johnsons called us a liability, didn't they? That's why you're really stepping back. Because having us hurt your business." "No," Daniel said firmly. "Having you saved my business. Saved my life. Saved my soul. The Johnsons can think whatever they want. Any partnership that requires me to hide my children or be ashamed of them isn't a partnership I want. Even if it costs you millions. Especially then. Because it would teach you the wrong lesson, that money matters more than people. That success is more important than family. And I already taught you that lesson once, with my absence. I won't teach it again." Grace looked up at him with her mother's eyes. "Mama used to say you were a good man who got lost. She said lost people can find their way home if they really want to. Did you find your way home, Papa?" Daniel's vision blurred with tears. "I'm still finding it, sweetheart. Every day, with your help and David's, I'm finding my way back to being the man your mother believed I could be." "She'd be happy," Grace said simply, "that we're together. She always wanted us to be a family." David stood abruptly and walked to the window, his shoulders tense. Daniel recognized the posture. It was what David did when he was feeling too much and trying not to show it. "David." Daniel approached carefully. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's. That's the problem." David's voice was thick with emotion. "Everything's good now. You're here. We have food, clothes, school, safety. Grace is happy. I should be happy too. But But I keep waiting for it to end. For you to realize this is too hard. For something to go wrong. For you to leave again. David turned, and his face was wet with tears. I keep having dreams where I wake up and we're back on the street and this was all just a dream. And I'm terrified, Papa. I'm so terrified of believing this is real. Daniel crossed the room and pulled his son close. It's real, David. It's real and it's permanent and you're stuck with me forever, whether you like it or not. Promise. David's voice was small, childlike, vulnerable. I promise on your mother's memory. I promise on my own life. I promise on everything I have and everything I am. You are my son. Grace is my daughter. And nothing, not business, not money, not distance, not time, will ever separate us again. David clung to him, finally letting himself believe, finally letting the walls come down completely. I forgive you, he whispered. I forgive you, Papa. Not because you deserve it, but because Mama asked me to. And because I want my father. I want to stop being angry and scared. I just want to be your son. Daniel held his boy and wept, tears of grief for the years lost, tears of gratitude for the chance he'd been given, tears of overwhelming love for these two precious children who'd survived so much and were brave enough to trust him again. Grace joined them, wrapping her small arms around both of them. We're a family now, she announced. A real family. Yes, Daniel agreed. A real family. Finally. The next morning, Daniel made another call that shocked his business associates. He was donating half his personal wealth, not his company's money, but his own private fortune, to establish the Ngozi Okafor Foundation. Its mission, to provide healthcare, education, and housing support to single mothers and their children throughout Nigeria. You're giving away billions, his financial advisor sputtered. That's insane. No, Daniel corrected. Abandoning my family was insane. This is sanity. This is justice. This is making sure no other child has to watch their mother die because she couldn't afford medicine. No other child has to beg on the streets because their father forgot them. The foundation's first project was completing the renovation of the Ajagunal building where Ngozi had died. But instead of just fixing it up, Daniel did something else. He turned Ngozi's old room, their room, into a memorial and community center. On the wall where his photograph had hung, he placed a large portrait of Ngozi, beautiful and smiling, the way she'd looked when they'd fallen in love. Beneath it, a plaque read, "In memory of Ngozi Okafor, beloved mother, faithful wife, and the strongest person I ever knew. She taught her children to forgive, to hope, and to love even when it hurt. This foundation exists because she believed in second chances, even for those who didn't deserve them. May her kindness echo through every life we touch." On the day of the memorial's unveiling, the entire neighborhood came. Mama Ebel wept openly. David and Grace stood on either side of their father, holding his hands, looking at their mother's face immortalized on the wall. "She's beautiful," Grace whispered. "Just like you," Daniel said. "You have her smile, her heart, her grace." "And David has her strength," Grace added. "That's what she always said. That David was strong like her." David stared at his mother's portrait for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "My mother died believing my father would come back. She died forgiving him, loving him, hoping for him. For a long time, I was angry about that. I thought she was foolish for believing in someone who'd abandoned us." He paused, tears streaming down his face. "But she wasn't foolish. She was wise. Because she knew something I didn't, that people can change. That lost people can find their way home. That love is stronger than mistakes, and hope is stronger than pain." David turned to Daniel. "My father failed us. He failed my mother. He lost 15 years he can never get back. But he came back. He's here now. And Mama was right to believe in him. She was right to forgive him. She was right about everything. He looked back at Ngozi's portrait. Thank you, Mama, for teaching us to love even when it's hard, for giving us life even when yours was difficult, for believing when everyone else gave up. We'll make you proud. Papa will make you proud. I promise. The crowd erupted in applause and tears. Mama Ebel embraced the children. Neighbors who'd known Ngozi shared stories of her kindness, her laughter, her unwavering faith. And Daniel stood before the portrait of the woman he'd loved and lost and failed, making one final promise. I will honor you, Ngozi. Not just with buildings and foundations, but with how I raise our children. With how I live each day. With how I choose people over profit, presence over prestige, love over everything else. You deserved better than me. But I'll spend the rest of my life becoming the man you believed I could be. For you. For David. For Grace. For the family we should have been and the family we're becoming now. 3 months later, Daniel's company announced its new structure. Daniel as chairman emeritus, involved in major decisions but no longer running day-to-day operations. His deputy took over as CEO. Business analysts predicted disaster. Instead, the company thrived. Because Daniel brought something to his role he'd never had before: perspective. He knew what really mattered. He made decisions with wisdom instead of just ambition. And every evening without fail, he came home to his children. They had dinner together, did homework together, talked about their days together, built a life together. David joined the school football team. Grace discovered a love for painting. They made friends. They laughed. They healed. 1 year after Daniel found them on that street corner, David came to him with a request. I want to visit Mama's grave, he said. All of us together. As a family. So they did. Daniel, David and Grace stood before the simple headstone Daniel had replaced with a beautiful marble monument engraved with Ngozi's favorite Bible verse. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Hi, Mama, Grace said softly, placing fresh flowers. We're okay now. Papa takes good care of us. Just like you knew he would. David knelt, touching the stone gently. We miss you every day. But we're not angry anymore. We're happy. Papa kept your promise. He became the father you always said he was inside. Daniel knelt between his children, placing his hand on the grave. Thank you, Ngozi. For our children. For your forgiveness. For believing in me when I didn't deserve it. I'll love them enough for both of us. I'll be present enough for both of us. I'll make sure they know every day how much their mother loved them and how brave she was and how lucky I was to have known her. They sat there together as the sun set, 3 people bound by love and loss and the long, difficult road to healing. Daniel Okafor had returned from abroad as one of the richest men in the world. But he'd found his true wealth on a dusty street corner, in 2 children with his eyes and their mother's heart. He'd lost 15 years. But he'd gained something far more valuable. A second chance. A family. A purpose that mattered. And this time, he wouldn't waste a single moment. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey on Stories by Stoner. Daniel's story reminds us that success means nothing if we lose the people who matter most. What did this story teach you about family, forgiveness, and second chances? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, it's never too late to come home. It's never too late to choose love over everything else. Until next time, this is Stories by Stoner, reminding you that the best stories are the ones that change us. God bless you all.